we need to get ourselves warmed up a bit. A small word of advice on how to hold your pen. Rather than holding it as you would when writing, so putting your fingers on the paper, try to hold it perpendicular on the surface, like this, without your hand touching the paper. It will give you a greater range of motion and will help you develop your motor skills more adequately and more rapidly. It might feel a little bit awkward when beginning, but it gets better quickly. So yeah, let's start out with some ellipses. They're really good for loosening up the muscles. Experiment a little bit. See what happens if you start at the top of a circle and then draw it. And how is it different from when you start at the bottom? Or if you go around the clock or counterclockwise.
Don't move too slowly. If you move too slowly, you might wobble too much or you don't close together. Yeah.
Do it too fast, it becomes an egg. So try to
over the paper. Yeah. Maybe multiple.
What helps is to do it first just in the air, slightly above the paper, and then actually do the real shape. Maybe do a couple of variations. Do an ellipse. Try to vary the width of it. See what happens if you change the angle. And by the way, try to keep your paper in place. So don't turn it. That's cheating. Then you miss out on that motor skill experience. So try to vary the angle of the ellipse without moving the paper. Well, with these lines and circles, we can basically construct any form or shape. And these are basically the letters of our alphabet, those basic shapes. So triangles, squares, circles, and compositions of those line forms. Let's try a couple of combinations. Here in the bottom right corner, try to copy a couple of those shapes. What you would works for you also. The simplest way we found that we could draw a human figure is the double U man, as you call it. Which basically is a upside down U, another U in it, and then a circle on top of it. And then you can still add the arms and the hands. And it immediately becomes a personality. Again, the trick is leaving out what you can, because if you leave out more details, the more universal the person becomes, and the easier it becomes to identify them. So it conveys actually conveys more if you leave out the details. Cool trick with this one is that you can also very easily draw a group of people if you put this down as your style for drawing human figures, which is just use and then the heads, and then you have a group of people, and it saves you the time of going like.
It's also more connected to each other, so it feels more like a group.
Yeah.
And if you simply want to tell the story of one guy being excluded of a group, this is more than enough. You don't need to tell what kind of clothes he's wearing, whether it has 5 fingers or 6. It doesn't really matter. It's only this is one guy outside of the group, and maybe you're thinking of ways to include him. So that's the only thing you need to tell. So it's really functional. It's not really about art. It's only about what you want to convey in your drawing.
We tend to use these kind of this style of drawing human figure, particularly in situations where we have to fall back on really rapid drawing. For example, when you're facilitating a group of people and you really have to record different information about different stakeholders really fast. You just draw them with a figure like that and draw, for example, a letter on them, and then you know which is which.
Dylan, what kind of common mistakes are made with this figures?
Yeah, common mistakes is basically varying too much from the proportion of the human body. We kind of use a ratio like this, so it's about 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. And if you vary too much from this, I don't know, yeah, it could be a really fat person or just like some horizon with the sun above it. At some point, it just loses touch with what we see as a human figure. The advantage of this kind, sticking to this rough proportions, is that even from a distance, even if it's really small, it still becomes roughly recognizable as a human figure, even though the head is way too big for an actual person. My head would be this size, but they still have some space to draw maybe some eyes. And one thing that's very important if you want to convey what people are looking at is the nose, because of course the nose always points in that direction. So now you immediately know that this person is looking to the left and this one to the right. Above. And then you can add the eyes if necessary, if that's really necessary. There's a couple of schools of thought there. No, I know people that do a triangle, or just I do a dash, that, or a T, upside down T, or yeah, there's basically any shape really. Actually, you can vary that. If you have a person with a nose like this and a nose like this, you immediately start to develop character.
It's a real personality then.
And an interesting thing is that if we want to convey that it's a he or a she, what do you do then? Then you really start to have to dig into like people's preconception about what gender is. Usually, the easiest way to, for example, turn this into a woman is, of course, to give her maybe some longer hair, or this could be a skirt or pants, I don't know. But this is the guy, the lady, the person.
And if you want to draw a child, just make the head a little bit bigger than the body.
Yeah.
Parents and child.
Yeah, so that's a really easy way of drawing a human figure. We do that a lot for really quick sketches, but yeah, when we have to give a little bit more character and add more attributes to the person. For example, if you draw a person like that with stick figure arms, it looks really weird if you draw a watch on the arm. So it becomes like a big ball on a small arm. So then we go for a slightly wider limb, so you can add more information on that. It's basically again the box and the head, and then we do a kind of tentacle thing with it. And you can use again you can use joints if necessary, but if it's not exactly necessary, you can leave it out. It really depends on what exact pose you would want to do and what kind of emotion or expression you would want to convey. Again, if you want to keep this person from floating away into space, we would have to ground them maybe a little bit. Close it curving, but we'll get to that later. Well, if we want to string the words that we now know how to draw together, you need some kind of grammar, and there's basically two categories: the linear and the sideways approach, like that. like the Egyptians used in their hieroglyph, and the top-down, which conveys more relational aspects. Doing the communicating the linearity with a shape like this is quite difficult. You would need like numbers to convey the order in which a person would maybe kick the ball from one to another. While in this one, it would be really hard to find out what the relationships between people are, aside from any linear relationship. So if there were a person behind here, you wouldn't know what the distance between them would be, for example. So actually, both of them have their disadvantages, and to bypass that, we use an intermediary, which is the treasure map. It contains both top-down perspective, but also sideways. And by doing that, it also enables you to be a little bit more playful with the rules of perspective, and you can just organize the elements of your story in a way that creates enough space and leaves enough space to put all the information in, and still convey all the complexity of the relationships, and could also communicate some kind of order and linearity. And here are some examples of drawings. So here, in these two drawings, we kind of use the treasure map perspective. Of course, the thing with the treasure map is that things are not their actual size. We played with that a little bit here. So, in order to emphasize that there is a little bit of perspective, we made the people here in the distance a little bit smaller, but not as small as they actually should be, perspective-wise. And that creates an effect that it gives a feeling of depth, but it's actually easier to read actually what these persons are doing. And then we'll give you some tricks on how to do that yourself. Can you put it in light? So get your papers ready. Basically, most importantly, what you should do is to figure out how to organize the elements of your story in space, and how they should be positioned in relationship to each other. We use basically these two shapes to group different elements of the story together. The ellipse is a really good one, as Nathan already showed you. If you want to draw a group of people, just put an ellipse under them, around them, and immediately they become a group. So then you put them together, and basically you have another person that is here, and you already have some kind of order on the page. And then you can say this person wants to approach this group, for example, and convince them to do something else. Maybe go to the top of this mountain to plant a flag. And this entire story, we would want to frame that also in kind of landscape. You could do it like this. You draw kind of box around it. You could say this person right now is in Germany, is going to France, and then they're going to Switzerland to climb a mountain, for example. In that sense, you could, in that way, you could create some order, and it will also immediately form a kind of narrative. So let's try out a couple of those boxes. Depending on the amount of information that you need to fit on one of these trapezoids or planes, if you call them, you could vary with the angle. So we usually start with the two parallel lines here, and one that is longer underneath it, and then we connect those two. You can leave a mark at the center line with the option for constructing later on. and then you can put arrange different elements of your story on that shape. So you go from A, B, C.
I heard a lot of you talk about we don't ever draw. We only use schematics. This is basically a scheme that you often make in PowerPoints. Only it's put in space, and it helps you to put things on the scheme that have more realistic representations.
Yeah. For example, let's say that we want to draw a visual metaphor for a SWOT diagram, and so it's about strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And strength is maybe a hand, shows power. Weakness, the opposite, maybe a wobbly hand. Opportunity is a chance to achieve something, and a threat is something you should be warned by. Want to convey different scenarios, for example, or draw this out on the page, we could just arrange them like that on the page, just for quadrants. Basically, this is a way, with this approach, you can, by tilting the plane of that you would use in a diagram, you immediately bring it to life, and then you can use your drawings to fill out the different elements of the diagram. And it's a really easy way to just translate any diagram into something with a little bit more spatial relationship. If this triggers any questions that you just ask, because of course this course is really about making it applicable to you. So if you give any example, for example, if you would like to draw, just tell it and work with that. Another one maybe would be one that we often use. It's for processes is an arrow. Again, this is a slightly longer trapezoid, and then we stick a triangle inside. And we can divide this into different subsections. You'll see already sneaking in a little bit of perspective. You see the trapezoid here. Of course, this line is closer towards you, and this one line is farther away. So that means it should be smaller, because things tend to get smaller as we move away from us. And which means that the lines connecting these two also are converging to a certain point. And if you want to tilt the diagram, all the lines that were vertical would actually have to point in that direction. The horizontal lines, of course, stay the same. What is a diagram that you would want to draw? To give an example. It's a diagram that you frequently used to explain something.
Maybe like a process?
Huh?
Maybe like a process?
Like a circular process?
Yes, a circular process.
Okay. Well, of course, if you would do it in 2D, you would draw it like this. And we would tilt this circle on the plane to become more an ellipse. So if we have maybe a process with 3 steps, we can then emphasize the arrows. We can do the same in this plane. In order to do that, you see here in the construction we have 2 concentric lines, and which means we need 2 concentric ellipses. Make sure they're wide enough. Put the other in. And then we again make that this line, 3 dividing lines. Here's the center, slightly above the center line. Again, those lines point in that direction. These also then become the triangles. If you want to know where the point is, it should be on the middle line here. Then you just connect it to So that's, for example, how you would describe a circular process in a more visually compelling way. And this would also, if you want to elaborate on what would happen in those steps, you can draw it on top of these. So you can say, first this happens, then this, and this. And then you can just put the elements of your story on top of that and illustrate it, what it actually means. Especially in this kind of with this kind of drawing, using shadow really works, because this shape, that circular shape, is floating, is on top of the plane. It should have a shadow underneath it. If you then make this underside, all the lines on the underside of the drawing thicker, it immediately lifts out the shape. Lifts it out of the paper and onto the paper, top, rather than in it. But in a lot of cases, you would need it to be that complicated. You could just make do with regular lines. Here are a couple of examples. You could vary with the type of line that you use and convey different kinds of relationships between the elements. So you have 3 elements, and some of these are related like this, and this one is related with a dotted line. That means something. That actually conveys that there's something there, or something to do, or at least in any case, it conveys that there's a different relationship between these 2 elements than with these other 2. And you could then, of course, also use those lines to attach text boxes to them to kind of describe the content of it. Yeah, if you give lines some width, you can put things on them. You've already seen it with that circular diagram. So make them slightly wider, and it gives you some space to work inside of. Illustrate what's within, in this case, the arrow conveys, of course, a kind of process, kind of something happening, and you could fill that with different steps and then detail what happens in those steps. With arrows, you usually start out with the middle line, and then create two parallel lines on the sides of it. Then the arrowhead, starting with the perpendicular lines, and then we connect these. And then you can basically do with anything you want with the arrow. This. You turn it into a road with all these things around it and on it, and divide it into different sections. And then it becomes really a storytelling tool. Here's an example of a drawing we did. Do you know where this one's from, Bertie?
No, it's I think a municipality in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Some kind of challenge they did with people who live there, and well, in the selection process of the ideas that followed.
I think it has to do with things like sustainability and the circular economy, and how to activate people to generate ideas themselves. This kind of describes the process. But you see, it's basically the backbone structure is just an arrow that comes towards you, and it's divided into separate sections. And by numbering also the different parts of the arrow, it re-emphasizes the fact that it's going into this direction. And by using color, you also create different relationships between the elements. And this is another example that we did for the Dutch Rowing Federation. Looks like a pretty complicated drawing. The perspective is a little bit weird. Wouldn't recommend to do it unless you or at least start off with a perspective like this, because it's really complicated to move things around in this kind of way. But in reality, it's really a simple structure. Basically, you start out with A, then you go towards B, and the transition goes through a process. In this case, it was the Rowing Federation was seen as or at least found out that people perceived them as a closed-off, walled-off organization that is inaccessible, and they wanted to transition to a more open organization for the entirety of the Netherlands, the contours of the Netherlands, and but still retaining some of that old tradition, which is symbolized by the towers. So really combining that kind of diagram way of structuring information and then adding metaphors on top of it really helps you to build a really visually attractive tool for storytelling. Yeah, so 3 main takeaways. If you make drawings of it and really show the relationship between the different elements of your story, it creates a more explicit, it makes it, how you see the relationship between the different elements explicit. And it really leaves no room for assumptions or wrong interpretations. And if it turns out to be a wrong interpretation, it really makes that explicit in itself, and then it becomes a tool for generating discussion. Combining all these different elements, using the entire range, including text and arrows and such, together with those you can really create a complete piece of information. And drawing enables you to convey information in a non-linear way, rather than stringing words together to form sentences and conveying them in over time. You can show it all at the same time and let people go through it at their own pace. Well, one thing to start with is to start out thinking about what you're going to draw, and then about how you're going to draw it. What you're going to draw, a really good way of doing that is by making sticky notes, arranging them, finding out what the proper arrangement is, and then finding out whether it's as exhaustive as necessary, but also as not too complicated. And then you can think about how you're going to convey it and how you are going to convey a sense of priority and focal points. We do that in different ways, and there are different approaches to that. Example of there are basically three types of relationships between different nodes of information. One is a time relationship, so a progression, first this, then that, and that. A comparison, A is different from B, and a systems relationship, which really is about the relationship itself between the different elements, so how they are related to one another. And we do that, and we can convey that information on different levels. You're obviously aware with the logical way of doing that. For time communicating time, you would use a flow chart. For comparison, bar charts. For systems, maybe an org tree or any kind of organizational diagram. Emotion on an emotional. If you want to communicate information on an emotional level and bring it across, we tend to use metaphors, and particularly metaphors that are that you're sure, or at least a conviction of, that it will actually land in the audience's mind. Something that either comes from their own experience or from a story that is personal about you, and that based on your relationship with them, they are ready to proceed. And then we have the practical approach, which is really about it making it actionable and making a kind of manual of it, and doing it and conveying information as clearly about certain actions as clearly as possible by showing the actions. So if you would fill it out, you would get this diagram. Any questions about this? Otherwise, we're going to skip to the next. Oh. What we're going to focus on most for the next part is about the emotional level. Practical, with the practical part, I assume you are aware of that way of communicating. Practical information would be to show different panels, for example, photographs of different steps. Comparisons you could do with before and after images. Well, I'm sure you're all aware of the existence of maps and how they can be used to navigate yourself through a system. Using metaphors to convey information is really where the power of drawing really comes in, because you can actually really easily fabricate a new metaphor and really easily build a metaphor for yourself by using drawings. There's no real limitation. And well, that could help you convey like a really complex strategic diagram that you had in mind into a deceptively simple graph that conveys maybe the same kind of information. And this was a strategic development plan for Deltaros. It's a consulting firm in water technology. And we helped them to convey their 2050 future vision in several steps. But it's of course started out with a composition of separate, quite not very complicated sketches. You can recognize the quadrants here, the three different arrows, and all these different characters standing on top of them. Here's another example. Really find out, you recognize the arrow there, the learn scroll also, and also different kind of planes of information stacked on top of each other. But you can also really convey it even more into a metaphor. You could really leave the diagram alone and just draw a picture. You can kind of observe maybe an arrow here, and of course there are two arrows here. This one was about an IT company or a gaming platform company that is going through a process of cultural change. They're trying to design basically their desired culture of the company, which is centered around pride on what the company stands for, and intimate relationship between the users and the developers that publish on their platform. And yeah, in order to kind of dissuade people from criticizing that maybe their logical, or I say that, critical mode, we decided to really go full on into a metaphor and really focus on this is a bigger picture, and let's share our ideas about how it should actually work. So in that sense, metaphors can be used to describe something that you're trying to convey. You could talk about your organization and figure out that we're trying to set a new course, go to new seas, and the captain is telling you this story because he wants you to be on board. But you could also use it the other way, and that's where it comes in handy as a facilitation tool. You could actually start out with the ship and ask the people, if we're on the ship, who's the captain? What is our dot at the horizon? Who's in the top of the mast looking out? What are the sails? What are our four main sails that are pushing us forward? What is the wind in that sense? It really easily becomes a tool for generating actually discussion rather than closing it off. And I really encourage you to look for those kinds of metaphors in your environment, because they can really help trigger really deep discussions about really fundamental things, which might be really sensitive to discuss straight on. But we basically have three rules when selecting a metaphor, either for facilitating discussion or actually conveying a message, so as a container. It's really about starting out with what is actually the strategic goal that you want to achieve. So what is at stake when you are conveying the information, and what should be the output of you conveying the information? Now, who am I telling it to? And then, based on that, you start to filter your the information that you're going to bring across, because you have to prioritize and you have to leave out things because you don't have an infinite people don't have an infinite amount of attention available for you. Then edit out the non-necessary parts, we called it, and then think about what the relationship between the different nodes are. And then you can transfer those into a metaphor that is suitable and that will land with the audience. Now here's an example of an image that we made for the Secretariat of Technical University. This kind of demonstrates our 330-300 rule, which is basically that an image should in 3 seconds show you what the main topic is. 30 seconds it should say something about the subparts, the second most important points, and then it should give you about 300 seconds of curiosity to explore the rest of the drawing. Here you can see that it's really about the secretaries, he's front and center, and then here are the different other stakeholders and four ways that they're going to optimize the way she works. And basically after that there's a lot of other things happening here, other universities that are also cooperating, things that will be facilitated from the university. And then it starts to elicit questions, and then you have a kind of constructive, then you can have a constructive discussion based on the image, which is also really framed around the main topic. Here another example about urban vitality in the city of Amsterdam. Urban vitality is the central point, and around that there's 4 subtopics which are going to facilitate that urban vitality. And then over here we're seeing examples of what